Can we allow it to be simple? Things like sleep and food and movement and safety and connection and rest and sunlight and joy. Those are very simple and they're very powerful. Welcome back to the Push Pause to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Rodersheimer. On this podcast, we explore health from the inside out, starting with the foundations, connection, and the conditions that allow the body to heal. Today is a solo episode, so it's just me, myself, and I, and some of the things that I've been thinking about that I've been meaning to share for a long time. And one of those thoughts is that I have been thinking about how we've made health too complicated. Do you ever think that? We're surrounded by messages telling us that we need the perfect test, the right practitioner, the best supplement, the newest diet or wearable or protocol or morning routine. And I could go on and on and on and on. And as a functional medicine physician and practitioner, I believe in testing and supplements and having the right care. That means a whole lot. And sometimes those things are absolutely necessary. But there is actually an unintended consequence to all of it. We can start to believe that the answers to our health are always somewhere outside of us. And without realizing it, we can start to give away some of our agency or power to create our own health. So that's what this episode is about. I think we become so focused on finding the right intervention that we've forgotten how much influence we actually can have. And I get it. You know, when I was suffering or struggling with RA, it's scary. You know, it seems like your body's doing its own thing and you're completely powerless to any of it. Like, why would my joint swell today? Why am I having a flare? You know, why am I so exhausted on this particular day? It felt like there was no rhyme or reason. And that's a terrible feeling to feel very powerless over what's happening to you. So if you've ever felt that way, I completely understand. And one of the most important lessons that I learned when learning functional medicine, though, was that you may not be able to control everything about your health, but you almost always have somewhere that you can exert some influence. So, in this episode, I'd love for you to consider, where do you have influence here? And remember, it's not about blame, it's actually about possibility and hope. The goal of functional medicine was supposed to expand our possibilities. And that's what I want to return us to today. I remember my very first functional medicine conference I ever went to. It was an introduction to the concepts of functional medicine for primary care doctors, and it was hosted by the Cleveland Clinic. I was so excited by all I learned that day. I remember just like aha moment after aha moment, and my mind was just like, whoa, what is going on here? You know, the possibilities, the options, it all felt very expansive to have more tools for me to offer my clients and myself than just pharmaceuticals. In traditional medicine, what I had been taught in medical school is you look for the diagnosis. What's the diagnosis? And that was, you kind of make a differential list of ideas that you think might be going on, and you boil it down, and you've got the diagnosis. And then what's the treatment? Like, that's literally the paradigm of what I learned in medical school, the diagnosis and the treatment. And the treatment for most of the time is some sort of medicine. So we learn a lot about pharmacology and what medicine's going to address what symptom or condition. But functional medicine really widened that lens for me. I started to think, why might this be happening? Which, just again, like being trained for so long to look for the diagnosis and look for the treatment, I had never once been told to ask why. So that alone was a profound shift in thinking. And then to think about what systems are involved and how are they interconnected? And what role could nutrition or sleep or stress, movement, gut health, hormones, the environment, our relationships, and all of that be playing? And then how can we actually create an environment for the body to heal? These questions were incredibly empowering. But let's be honest, functional medicine has actually also become an industry in and of itself. You know, it's kind of trendy a lot. It's growing, it's gaining popularity. There are fancy specialty tests that you can get, complex protocols, long supplement lists. expensive programs, there's biohacking, lots of conflicting advice. And someone watching from the outside could easily conclude, like, I can't do functional medicine. I can't afford all of that, or I don't even know where to start. It feels really overwhelming. Or maybe even I need an expert to figure out what's wrong with me and a gadget or a pill to fix me. And when health becomes so complicated that we're afraid to begin, I think we've lost something truly important. Sometimes we need the expert, but needing help or guidance is very different from believing that all of the power over our health lies outside of us, because that is not true. There's lots of language I hear that feels disempowering as well. So, I hear clients say these things to me. I hear friends and family and people talk about, oh, it's just my genetics, or this is what happens when you get older. It's menopause. Everything's menopause, and there are a lot of things to menopause, for sure, but not. It's just menopause, and then I give up. Autoimmunity runs in my family. I'm just going to get autoimmunity. Or I've never been a good sleeper. I'm always going to struggle with my weight. These statements are tough because some of those realities may be absolutely affecting someone's health. But the problem is what happens next. I can't completely control this thing becomes there's nothing I can do. There's that resignation. And that quiet resignation makes me so sad. I can't control everything and there's nothing I can do are two very different statements because none of us can control everything. Absolutely. But there is something that we can generally do. And you don't have to know how much is possible for you to begin to explore what is possible. You don't have to understand the full outcome to just get started. So instead of only asking, why is this happening to me? I want us to also learn to ask, where do I have influence here? Because that's where things start to change. The truth is that your health is happening on an ordinary Tuesday. So your health is actually happening when you wake up and reach for your phone immediately, first thing. Your health is happening when you eat something nourishing instead of running on coffee all morning. Your health is happening when you move your body, when you step outside, when you sit down to eat instead of eating over the sink or while doing the dishes. When you notice that you're stressed and you help your nervous system settle down just a little bit. When you say no to something that you don't have capacity for. When you call someone you love, when you laugh, when you rest, when you decide to go to bed. And none of that sounds revolutionary. That's exactly the point. Your health doesn't have to begin with a lab test. Your health doesn't have to be complicated or hard. Your health isn't only happening in the doctor's office. It's happening in your kitchen, in your bedroom, in your relationships, in your calendar, and your thoughts, and in the choices you make on any ordinary Tuesday. We've been conditioned to look for the big intervention while overlooking the cumulative power of our day-to-day choices. And that's what I'm here to try to reframe for you. I see those choices change people's health and lives day in and day out, those day-to-day choices. That's what we do in my practice really well. We help people make those choices a little differently and their lives change. That sure worked for me. More than any test that I've ever received, it was the small changes I made that moved the needle the most. I had to let go of the sugar and eat mostly whole foods. Big change. I learned to protect my bedtime. Big change. I learned to slow down and pause during the day. Whew, a big change. I even named my podcast Push Pause to Heal because of that one practice. These things build and they grow. And why, there is some ease in all of this, and simple does not have to mean insignificant. And I was thinking about this. Why is this concept so hard to grasp? You're not alone if you feel it can't be that simple. It can't be so easy. Because we live in a culture, honestly, that often equates expensive as powerful, complicated is sophisticated, hard is worthwhile, new is better, fancy is going to have more behind it. So if something is simple, we tend to discount it. I totally get that. Walking, that's too basic. That won't do anything. Sleep, sure, I know, but answering one or two emails won't do any harm, right? Eating nourishing food, but yeah, sure, but which foods are actually nourishing? Should I be paleo or vegan? Or maybe I should be counting all my macros because who knows if I'm getting enough protein? Can you feel me? Managing stress, sure, I'll do that once the kids grow up. For now, just tell me what supplement I should take. I think sometimes we distrust things that feel too easy. And our bodies don't assign value based on how difficult something was for us to do. Let's just sit with that for a minute. Your body doesn't assign value based on how difficult something was for you to do. Simple does not mean insignificant. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your health isn't adding something new or fancy. It's consistently giving your body something it has needed all along. And if it's simple, isn't that lovely? Can we allow it to be simple? Things like sleep and food and movement and safety and connection and rest and sunlight and joy. Those are very simple and they're very powerful. The fear that we have around our health can actually sometimes cause us to try to force our health to happen. I need this to happen yesterday. I can relate because I've been there. When you're scared and afraid of what your body's going to do next, you just want relief. But we cannot command our bodies to heal. You can't guarantee that doing X will produce Y. Instead, what if we create the conditions that allow our body to create health? So think of a garden. You can't force or command a seed to grow, but you can influence the soil. You can water it just the right amount, make sure it has the best amount of sunlight, the right temperature, protection from critters that are going to dig up that seed and eat it. And then the seed does what it was designed to do. And our bodies are obviously so much more complicated than that, but the principle is similar. We can't command our bodies to heal, but we sure can become active participants in creating conditions that support health. Then we let the body do what it was designed to do all on its own, and that's to be healthy. That is your default setting. The default setting for your body is health, and getting back there requires the safe environment for its return. And using our personal agency or those decisions that we make on that random Tuesday around our health isn't a guarantee of an outcome. It's a willingness to participate in the process. Sometimes creating the right conditions includes medication for a while. It might mean taking certain supplements. There might be tests involved. Sometimes asking for help or guidance is needed. And agency doesn't mean doing everything yourself. Absolutely not. I've learned that the hard way. We can't do it all on our own. Agency means recognizing where you have choices, including choosing when to ask for help. People often ask, what's the best diet? What's the best workout? Should I fast? How much protein? Which supplement? Should I get in the sauna or cold plunge? How should I be taking creatine? What's the morning routine supposed to be like? And often underneath those questions, I think is something bigger. Just tell me the right thing to do. And perhaps there's a different question actually, which is what would support me right now? There's generally not one certain thing that we're going to do and it's going to change everything. That's what we've been sold, the magic pill. That doesn't really exist. But what would support me right now? And where do I have influence today? Not when life calms down and the kids are out of the house, not next month, not January 1st, but today. You don't have to make the perfect choice. You need to make one supportive choice. I don't want to tell you just I don't want to just tell you that you have agency. I want you to actually experience it. So I have a request to those of you interested in leaning into this concept a little bit further. Tomorrow morning, before the phone, the email, the news, the kids, the work, and the world begin making requests of you, take 5 minutes for yourself. I want you to actually pause. Yes, that's the title of this podcast, Push Pause to Heal. Then get quiet. 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes and ask, how do I want to feel today? Not what do I need to accomplish, what's on my to-do list, but how do I want to feel? Then, once we know how we want to feel, we can think about what's one choice I can make today that would support that. For instance, if I want to feel energized, I might choose to eat a really solid breakfast. If I want to feel more calm, I'm not going to start the day with watching the news. If I want to feel strong or powerful, I could take a walk. If I want to feel connected, I could reach out and call that friend I haven't talked to in a while. If I want to feel rested, maybe I decide right then and there in the morning what time I'm going to go to bed that night. Maybe even set an alarm for myself. If I want to feel less overwhelmed, maybe I say no to something that doesn't light me up anymore. But just one choice, not 12. Start with one. Before the world begins making decisions for you, pause long enough to make one for yourself. That's where your agency becomes a practice rather than just an idea. Those tiny choices aren't only affecting your physiology and changing your body and your health, they're also changing the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Every time you take the walk, you start to think, actually, I'm someone who cares for my body. Every time you create a new boundary, you start to become someone whose needs matter too. And every time you rest without earning it, you think, I don't have to exhaust myself to be allowed to rest. Every time you make a supportive choice, you're learning to trust yourself. Small choices don't just change what we do. Over time, they change what we believe about who we are. And I've been thinking so much about this and how hard some of these simple things are to do. There's a reason this has been on my mind so much lately, and I've been thinking about how health has become so complicated and overwhelming, and about those of you who are curious about functional medicine but aren't ready for the time and expense of the testing and appointments and protocols, and also about those of you who already know a tremendous amount about health and don't need another piece of information, but you need help putting it into practice. And I kept thinking there has to be another way. More information isn't always the answer. Sometimes what we need is a place to practice what we've learned. So I've created one. Let me introduce you to the Balanced Living Experience. It's a monthly membership for those who are done collecting information and ready to start practicing what actually helps. This is not individualized medical care. It's not a replacement for your doctor. It's not a course to complete. Instead, each month, we have one clear theme to focus on, so we're not trying to change everything all at once. There's a welcome video from me introducing the theme and why it matters in your day-to-day real life. There's a companion guide for simple reflection and prompts to make the month's focus really personal. There's one monthly practice, a small change that we practice together because change comes from what we live, not just from what we learn. There's a monthly gathering, which is a live call to pause, connect, and get inspired along with others doing the same. And there are weekly community prompts, a place to check in, share, and find a helpful reframe if you need one. I don't want to create another place where an expert tells you what to do. I want to create a place that helps you understand yourself better, recognize where you have influence, and practice using it. And the truth is, I need this space too, because being healthy is a practice. It's a day-to-day commitment we make to ourselves. Some days better than others, and that's okay. But that's why I created the Balanced Living Experience, to give us a place to keep coming back to the practice, because it's that consistency, not perfection, that changes everything. Each month has a theme for the month I mentioned, and for September, the theme is Begin Again, a September detox and reset. We're getting back into routines, summer is ending, schedules are changing, and we often feel an urge to maybe get back on track, almost like we do in January, like a new start. But instead of a dramatic overhaul, we're just making a fresh start. And yes, there will be the 10-day group detox. It's coming back as an optional part of our September membership. But the detox isn't the September experience. It's just one part of it. The bigger question this month is really, what do I want to carry forward and what do I need to leave behind? We'll explore simple ways to support your body's natural detoxification processes while also looking at what else might be weighing you down. Too much noise or busyness, too much media, social media, the news, etc., an overfilled schedule, draining habits or relationships, or the belief that you always need to be doing more. We'll look at all of this. And if this is interesting to you, you're invited to join us. Doors open August 25th for the September experience, and they will always open the last week of each month for the following month to start. It's $50 a month, cancel anytime, and each month will be a new theme and a new invitation. Come when you're ready, we will be here. And whether or not you join us, I hope that you take something from this episode. You don't have to control your health to have influence over it. You don't have to know exactly what's possible to refuse resignation. You don't have to do everything to create better conditions for healing. And you don't need to wait for someone else to give you permission to begin. Thank you so much for listening, following the podcast, and supporting us and sharing this episode with someone that you love or care about.